Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Cutting Through the Bullshit. I am your host, Dr. Stephanie Snyder, and I am a high performance mentor. Through my unique blend of strategy, mindset, and intuition, I help men and women to cut through the BS in order to create the life and business they desire. Per usual, this topic is inspired by a recent interaction with one of my mentees, actually. So I have mentees in a couple of different scenarios. One, I work with my clients one-on-one. I consider them my mentees. But I also work with students that are working on their dissertation process, working to complete their Ph.D. or their EDD. And so I have regular check-ins with these clients, and I checked in with one of my mentees the other day, and I asked her I said, I know the new school year is starting and she is a teacher, and I said, how is the dissertation process going? What are you working on? How can I support you? And she said, well, my financial aid has run out. I've hit 7 years in my program. I don't know that I can continue. And I thought, well, shit, that's not how I thought this conversation was going to go today. I was unaware how many years she had been in the program already. So if you're unfamiliar with PhD programs, doctoral programs, typically it depends on the school, but the school that I work with, they have a 7-year limit on your program. 3 years of that typically is coursework, and then 4 years to write the dissertation. And at the 7-year mark, they kind of say, bye, see you later, like you're not doing anything. Many times students will try to get an extension so that they can actually finish their degree and not run around with just what's called an ABD, which is all but dissertation. Because that's crappy to put those letters at the end of your name. And so it was very shocking to me to get that information from her yesterday. And I thought, how often do we do this to ourselves where we don't have an actual pulse on things and we don't take any sort of initiative, any sort of action until it's almost too late, right? And this happens so many different areas of our lives, right? If we don't have a pulse on things, if we don't have a regular check-in to see where things are, we can be blindsided. And I use air quotes for that because there are signs that show up along the way. And we can be blindsided by this quote unquote crisis, right? So for me, this is why I have made it a priority to start to do annual labs where I go and get my lab work done so that I have a pulse on things. Now, I do different kinds of labs in terms of my blood work because, well, I spent a lot of time working with a naturopath. And I know the difference between the insurance covered labs and other covered labs. That's a story for another day. But that is a regular check-in for me so that I know physically, health-wise, what's going on for me. What do I need to tweak? What do I need to pay attention to so that, 10 years from now, I don't wake up with a heart attack kind of thing and be shocked by this, right? But a lot of the times people are not paying attention to these things, or even if they do that check-in, right? If you're getting annual labs and they're telling you have whatever and you're not paying attention to it, that's not really helpful, right? So this idea that she was blindsided by a 7-year time limit is kind of astonishing to me. I knew very, very well how much time I had put into my dissertation process and how much time I had left before my expiration date, right? And so if you are not getting these regular check-ins, you're not checking in with yourself. I like to do quarterly check-ins. So I'll have visions for each quarter. things that I want to achieve. I can call them goals, but I work with goals a bit differently. My relationship with goals is very different than a lot of people's relationship with goals. So it's not so much as this masculine push, push, push to reach that goal, and I'm worth nothing if that goal doesn't happen. It's very much, here's what I would like to see happen. Is that still important to me? Am I still working on it? Do I need to change it, modify it in any way, shape, or form? Do I need to step that up, essentially, right? So I ask myself these questions quarterly, where I'll sit down and go, okay, what did I want to work on this quarter for this 3-month period, right? This 12 weeks. What did I want to work on? Was I successful in that? Or did something come up and I realized that really wasn't as important to me as I wanted it to be? Do I need to course correct here? Do I need to decide that that's not a thing I'm going to focus on? What is going on, right? And so one of the things that I recently reflected on was my training. I love to do triathlons. I didn't make a triathlon happen this summer. There was a lot of travel that was initially unexpected. And so my training kind of fell to the wayside. And so having reflected on that, I knew, okay, I need a training schedule now that school is back in session that I can start with and I can continue to improve upon and check in with myself, right? And so it's just having these regular checkups, basically, right? Checking up on yourself to see, okay, hey, am I actually moving in the direction that I'm going in? And this is something that I work with my clients on a lot. Because I work with my clients for 6 months, we're able to get 2 of these check-ins in so they have a better idea of how to do it themselves when they're done working with me. Now, oftentimes many of my clients decide to work with me for longer than 6 months because they see the benefit and the power of working with me. But nevertheless, if they only do 6 months, that's cool. They've gotten what they needed and they have that information. And so what we do at the very beginning is I ask them where they want to be in 1 year and 5 years, right? And then I ask them where they are currently. And because I know where they want to be, and sometimes we have to do some work around figuring out where it is that they actually want to be, then I can start to set up this plan where we're actually checking in on that thing and ensuring that we're making progress towards where they actually want to be in a year from now. It is incredibly powerful when you actually know where you're going. You're gonna get there. It might take you a little bit longer, but you're actually going to get there when you know where you're going and you have a plan to get there. And so it's about having this pulse on it, right? So 3 months we check in. I go back to, where they were initially, and I have them reflect on it. Hey, do you still feel like you're still here? Or do you feel like you've gone forwards? Have you gone backwards? Do you feel like this is still a priority? Is this something that we need to tweak, something that we need to work on? Where are we and how can we continue to move forward to get you towards this 1-year goal? At the same time, are these 1-year goals still something that you're focused on? Or have your priorities shifted a little bit and we need to just kind of tweak the game plan? This isn't something where you're daily grinding. It is not heavy strategy, heavy masculine. It is, okay, here's the focus. Here's what I want my life to look like a year from now. Okay, cool. How do we backtrack and create that so that we actually reach it? Because if you don't know where you want to be a year from now, then you can't be blindsided by anything that happens a year from now because you don't actually know where you're headed. Right? So again, this is why these regular check-ins are helpful. Get a pulse on where things are. Be okay with where you are right now. If you've never done a check-in before, you have no idea what's actually going on, I do recommend that you set it up for, I have 6 different areas, if I can remember all of them off the top of my head, that I check in with my clients. Financial, relationship, health and nutrition, spiritual, personal, and there's one more that I always forget. It's like it's like when you're naming the 7 dwarfs, there's always the 7th dwarf that you forget. Nevertheless, there are 6 areas, and now it's going to bother me. I'm going to have to pull this up if I can do this quickly without creating a whole bunch of issues on my computer, which I'm not going to be able to. So I will stick it in the show notes though. I'll give you those 6 areas, pull it up, and I'll put that in the show notes so you have that. And what I do, again, very simple. I am very transparent about this. Those same 6 areas, sometimes I add a couple more depending on the person, right? I let them add an additional one if there's another area that we didn't actually cover. And so I'll say, okay, hey, these are your 7 focus areas, whatever it is, right? 6 or 7. I start with 6 because they are pretty broad, that you can usually incorporate all of your life in those 6 areas. And so, okay, where do you want to be a year from now? Where do you want to be 5 years from now? What does that look like? And where are you currently? Knowing where you are currently is so important to be able to get to where you want to go. Again, I'll include those 6 areas in the show notes. You're more than welcome to grab them and do your own little exercise yourself. Super, super helpful, just so you have that check-in. And so coming up on September here, I'm trying to do the quarterly. So September is the last month of the 3rd quarter. So I will start to do this check-in on myself towards the end of September and really get a feel for what October is going to look like, right? You can set your years up differently, whatever works for you. I just like to do the quarters. It's easy to kind of group things together that way. I do shift it a little bit because the end of the 2nd quarter is summertime. So June, July, August, those are my summer months where my expectations, my priorities shift a little bit because I am home with my kids. And that is a top priority for me, to hang out with them, enjoy the summer with them, all those things, right? And so again, I will include those categories into my show notes, so that you can do that check-in for yourself. But I just want you to pay attention to it, right? If you don't, because this happens, right? If you're not paying attention to where your time, your money, your energy is going, then at the end of the year, when you're reflecting on your year, there may be an oh shit moment where you're like, oh, I did nothing that I wanted to do this year. Oh, whoops. So how are you going to change it and make it better for the next year? Right? And I hear people talk about this all the time, especially around tax season, when you're doing your taxes and you look at how much money you brought in and you go, well, shit, what do I have to show for that? Well, did you have a plan? Did you want to have anything to show for it? And if so, were you checking in with yourself along the way? Because a year is a good amount of time. It's a good amount of time. So are you checking in with yourself? Have you paid attention to that being a goal and actually taken action on that goal, right? One of the things I wanted to do this year was to grow my YouTube channel. Well, that requires me actually posting on my YouTube channel and talking about it, right? And so I use my podcast to tell you about the YouTube channel. I use YouTube to tell you about my podcast, right? It works together. And so as my YouTube subscribers grow, I know that my podcast is also growing, right? They work together because it is most of the time very similar material. I do want to start to branch out and give a little bit more exclusive stuff to the YouTube channel and vice versa to the podcast, so that, you do get different things on both of those avenues. But for the summertime, the easiest thing for me was to go, okay, I'm going to record the podcast episode on video and on audio so it can go on the podcast and it can go on the YouTube channel. That was the easiest thing for me. And so that's what I did, right? But that was something that I wanted to do this year. And so I had to make it a priority. Cool? Get it? All right. So again, I'm going to include those 6 areas into the show notes. If you do have any questions, or if this is something that you want to work on with me individually, I have private clients right now. I do not have any group programs currently offered. Not my wheelhouse right now. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen soon, but I do work with my clients privately currently, and that is something that I do have some space for. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely reach out to me. You can find me on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, on the podcast, on my website, stephaniesnyderphd.com. All of the avenues. I've actually had a lot of people start to reach out to me on LinkedIn, which is super fun too. And so if you do have any questions, even about this exercise itself, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And honestly, if you want your life, if you want to have any input on the creation of your life, which you do regularly, but if you want to be more intentional about that input, you've got to get a pulse on things. You've got to figure out where you are and where you're going so you can actually make that happen. Otherwise, you're just kind of drifting along, and the end of the year will come and you'll go, shit, what did I do this year? Right? And nobody wants that. So I'm sending you so much love. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. And as always, be big, be bold, and be beautiful. That was, wow, I totally screwed up the ending on that one. So as always, be you, because the world needs more of you. Bye, love.